All right, so now that the Peterbilt is out of the shop, before we can start on the next project, we're gonna kind of clean house a little bit and get rid of some of the things alongside the wall. Like when you do things like we do, like a lot of guys get this and some don't, because some people continuously tell us we need to clean the shop. You know, here's the reality. You can't do the scope of work that we do in this space and not get jumbled up with pieces and parts and stuff and equipment that it takes to do this. And in between these projects, we like to take just a little bit of time, go through some stuff, see what we can do to tidy up. And today's no different. We got some extra cross members. I was going to use these. They were just kind of pitted. Didn't really care for them. Decided to use others. They're already painted, so I'll take them over to another piece of property. That is an air tank from something different that I was going to use on this truck. Decided not to. We'll put it back where it came from. So on and so forth. Drive shaft pieces. We always need drive shaft parts. Transmission jack, I got to get the hydraulic bottle jack portion of it repaired. These sawhorses I made, I got to find a place for them. And we come over to this side. Like, I want to get back on Project Overkill, my F750. It's under this tarp for over a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. So all of this has to get cleaned up. We've shoved it back just to give us some more working room. Instead of having just 2 aisles, we just had the one. So the idea is we got to condense this stuff. I use the Evolution chop saw all the time. I use the welders all the time. I use a plasma cutter all the time. However, since I've got the HTP welder and plasma cutter, I'm not using these three at all. I just don't use them. I bought that Lincoln Power MIG a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. I've used it a little, but ever since we got that, I just stick with that because I really like how well it welds and how easy it is to use. So I reached out to HTP at Petersville and I asked them if they made a cart for that because it's a little wider than your traditional welder. So it's not really going to fit on your average bargain basement hobo freight welding cart. So they make one for this, so they sent us one. We're going to go ahead and put this together, and I opted for the dual tank setup for the rear so that we can have the regular 75-25 argon, and we're going to also have 90-10 on that cart as well, so we can do some pulse MIG. I have some fuel tanks that need some work, so we're going to pulse MIG them, I think. But anyways, I want to get this set up, and we got to do a lot of house cleaning. We're going to get these tanks plasma cut, get them broke down, ready for scrap, and so on and so forth. I need to get this tank secured. I ran out in the middle of last welding, so it is what it is. I have 4-5 argon tanks now. For a guy that's not a welder, I sure have a lot of welders and gas tanks. Anyways, let's get to work putting this thing together. So that's what it's gonna look like when it's done. I'm not gonna make one of these cheesy videos where you sit and watch me put nuts and bolts together. I mean, you guys are intelligent enough that if you buy one, I'm sure you can figure out how to put it together. So I'll get it together, I'll bring it back, and let's see. We're gonna try and fit the plasma cutter and the plasma cutter on the bottom and the welder on top, and put our 2 gas bottles here. Wow. One thing I noticed, we got nylocks. There's none of them little cheesy, cheap lock washers. It's got a serrated washer in there. But and every bag is labeled as to what's in it. And this one even tells you it's for the handle. And then, these are the 8mm. I don't know. I'll probably go ahead and use my tool. But they give you the tools to put it together. I mean, I would think that if you have a welder, this is probably unnecessary because, you probably have enough tools to put it together. And there's one thing I would mention about assembling any welding cart or anything that moves, right, that has bolts holding it together. I always think about this after I started to assemble it, but I would like to clean up every so often around some stuff, clean the paint off, and then spot weld, put myself a little weld in a few places just to help stiffen it up, because even though this is all bolted together with nylocks, as things move, you start to you start to wear and the paint starts to wear away, and then it's not quite as tight as it used to be. So I always think of that after, and I wish I would thought of it beforehand, but it'd be nice to have it welded together, I think. Anyways. Also, if you welded it together, you wouldn't have these bolts sticking up, and they have to come up this way instead of the heads, because if you do it the other way, then the swivel, this metal part, hits the bolt, so they have to go that way. But anyways, food for thought. So I've got it all together, and I put the shelf at this point because I'm going to put my plasma cutter down here, and I'll put the welder on top, and then we'll have room for the welding wire, tips, and consumables on that shelf. Next would be to put these two brackets on. These are the holders that secure the tank. Okay, I like my brackets as high as possible because I use a little bit taller tank. I don't use that small one like that. I use a little bit taller one. So I like this support to be as high as possible. And I'm going to be putting dual tanks on, so I'm not using these anyways. And I'm going to be using these. So with the dual tank, you can see this is pretty stout. I don't know if that's 3/16 plate, but it fits down in here, and I don't know if they intend for you to weld this to the cart to help stiffen up the cart. I don't know what the intentions are, but I think that's probably what I'm going to do. So I'll have to just lift the tank into this socket here to hold it every time we change it, but it's not really a big deal. And then the top, it's not drilled at all. And like I said, I like my brackets as high as we can go. So I'm just gonna mark this out, re-drill these holes here, and use bigger bolts, longer bolts, and just sandwich all this together, and it'll help tie some of this together, make it a little bit stronger. Not gonna hurt anything by far, but this is, comparatively speaking, the amount of steel that's here compared to here. I mean, if you just look at the difference in thickness, you know, it's quite a bit. So I think it's best if I drill that. That's what I may just drill this into here too as well. I might just put 2 holes vertical, which would help with side-to-side movement. And yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, I like it. Let's do that. All right, so there it is, completely assembled. I just opened these holes up just a little bit and added one more down here. And it's not going to hurt anything to stiffen that cart up by putting 2 bolts here and here and using that plate, which I believe is 3/16. I think that stiffened it up quite a bit. Of course, we'll be pulling on it up here the most, but everything will help. I didn't paint anything. I think they want you to weld these possibly. I didn't do it just in case I need to make some other changes, which it's pretty likely I might. So, anyways, without further ado, let's get the tank in. Ooh, I see a flaw. Okay, so the tank's going to sit on top of that. So it's going to sit a little cattywampus. It's going to want to fall this way. Alright, well, we'll see how it does. So, if you're going to use 2 tanks, there's a slight design flaw. This is wide, but my tanks will sit on this edge and push that way. So I just took a couple 2x4. I took a 2x4 and I ripped it down, and I added a piece of OSB on top of it so that now it will sit squarely on top of that. It took, you know, like 5 minutes and a couple pieces of scrap, a couple screws. It is done. I have everything on here the way I think I want it, but you know how that is. You'll start to use it, you want to make changes to it, so it is what it is. So I got the welder on top, and one of the problems with welders on weld carts is, for me anyways, is the welder slides around. And I wanted to make this semi-permanent. I wanted it so, you know, it didn't move around on there, but I didn't have to remove anything to take it off and use it somewhere else. So I wanted to try it right here and see how I liked it. So I used OSB, and I just cut it in here so it's a friction fit. It's just around here in different locations, just enough to keep it from moving around, and you know, as you can see, it's obviously pretty snug. So once I'm happy that I think that's where I want it, then I'll probably take some little piece of half by half angle iron or something, drill a few holes, you know, and place it where we want it. Because I don't want to rub it against screws and that kind of stuff. And it brings me to this part here. I shoved it to one side a little bit so I get away from the center of this extra tank here. So in my experience, these weld carts, you move them around and then the welder starts to move, and you know, it gets too close to the tank. Next thing you know, you're pinching off your gas to the inlet. So I'm going to see if I can find a 90-degree fitting to come on here, and that can help alleviate that problem. I switched over to the original hose that came with the welder, because now that I'm going to have two tanks on here, there's no need for me to unhook the flow meter from this one and then go hook it up to another welder that has a different gas in the tank. So I don't need that on this anymore. So I went back down to, you know, the factory one that came on it. I got the plasma cutter in the bottom, plenty of room. The shelves are adjustable. This could come up again, or you could drill whatever holes you wanted, I guess, but it's set up perfectly for the plasma cutter on the bottom. Works out well. Plenty of room to stuff the power cord, the gun, the ground clamp, everything inside there. The shelf, I've got all my consumables for the plasma cutter here, consumables for the welder, the gas cap for my cylinder, a couple rolls of MIG wire, welding gloves, and my pliers. And I put the working clamp here and the power cord on this one. I don't like to wind up this here. The gun could probably use like one more of these back here, where you could bring the gun over and kind of loop it that way maybe. I don't know. I just loop it up around my flow meter in my tank. I'm not going to leave my helmet here. I have a bag that it needs to go in to be protected, so it needs to get in there. But man, those wheels, I didn't mention it, those wheels have roller bearings in them. I thought that was pretty neat. One design flaw that I saw, which really, I mean, if you're a welder, you can take care of this pretty easy, was when you go to set this tank in, it wants to hit here on this lip. And when it does, well, obviously the tank hits here, it wants to lean this way. And you can see we scraped in there on that side before we tried it. And I just temporarily, it's only temporary unless it works, and it's probably permanent. That's how that stuff works. But I just used I just took a 2x4, ripped it in half, so it's 1 3/4 tall, and I just added a piece of OSB and screwed the two together. I peeled one wheel off, slid it in from the side, dropped it in place, and it's locked on the bolts, in between the bolts for the axle, so it can't slide. It's good enough. So this bracket itself, I have bolted here and down there at the bottom on both sides, and I bolted this one. I used the existing holes for the shelf for the top. I just opened them up just a little bit so I could use 5/16 hardware. I drilled a new hole here on, you know, both sides and put it up as high as we could get it. And I'm going to tell you, that really stiffened that thing up a lot. So I'm very happy with that. I like the cart, and I think the nicest thing compared to what I've been using, the biggest improvement, is the width. You know, it's so much more stable than what I have now. And we'll be using, I'm sure, quite a bit. We have lots of projects coming up. I didn't paint that. I didn't weld this because I think I might make some changes. I've never liked these chains. They're adequate, they work. But if you notice what's going to happen here, it's real easy for that to come out when you're doing a double. So maybe when you're doing doubles, I wonder if it makes a difference coming this way. Maybe. Anyways, I think what I'll do is get one piece of chain, and I'll put one link, you know, traditional chain, not the double twisted chain like this. But I'll take regular chain, put a through bolt here, let one section of chain go this way, the other section come this way. And I probably won't use these at all. I'll probably drill a hole here, use an eyelet with the eyelet up, and a thumb wheel. And just hook the chain to that and then tighten the thumb wheel. and do that on both sides. That way this will be nice and snug, because with 2 tanks back there, you know, 1 bangs around enough, and I like things to be nice and tight and quiet. So yeah, that's what we'll do there. Yep, it worked out pretty good. I'm very happy with it. So we're going to continue to clean up the shop and get prepared to get back at some other projects. We're not starting anything new right now. We're going to try and clean up a bunch of the stuff that's been in process but not completed. I get comment after comment after comment from people wanting to know what this truck is. Anybody that's been around any number of time, any amount of time, you know what that is. I started that probably 2.5, 3 years ago. What it was a water truck. I towed it in. I sold the water tanker and the equipment off of it, and it had a problem with the engine. I believe it over revved, and the head was it floated some valves, I think, lost the keepers, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. It needs an in-frame. So the head was no good. I had another head, sent in the machine shop. I took it off another truck. They did that head up, had it for 6 weeks. Meanwhile, we started working on other stuff. It got buried. We just haven't got back to it. We're going to save the in-frame for another truck. We're just going to pull that motor and swap another one in. But that's coming up soon. And Project Overkill, which has been under this tarp now for 2 years. We're going to unbury this one. And we're going to complete the build on this, and then that truck's for sale. That won't be for sale. We're going to finish the C10 LS swap. We'll get it back to him. We're going to finish the landscaping trailer that I started building, or rebuilding, resurrecting, whatever. We're going to finish that one, and we got to get the C4500 done. My Dodge needs a bunch of work. We have to do all of these things I'm telling you so we can get this stuff done and handled, so that I can get some finances back in order, because that Peterbilt just killed us. We put 6 months into it. It hurt us financially like you can't imagine, and it's gonna take me a little while to recover, that's for sure. So we got to get some of these things done, get them out of our hair. I've got a lot of money invested in them. They need to get sold and get out of here. That'll get sold. This will get sold. The landscape trailer is going to get sold. Eventually, we'll work our way to where we've moved stuff away from projects, and we can bring back in the dyno and some of the other things we have going on. So anyways, I hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing. We got a lot more to come. Stick around. We'll catch you on the next one. So I found I had some of this small link chain laying around, and I cut a section that would fit and do this size tank and a little bit bigger if need be. And I got to tell you, I really like this a lot better. I like that it's one piece, comes over this way. I still think I'm gonna drill a hole and use the eyelet, just, you know, open it up just a little bit so this can go in, and the thumb wheel so I can tighten it up. I'm probably still going to do that, but you know, that'll just take a little time to get the stuff. I did locate a fitting for this. They do make basically it's just an interrupter. It gives you the male side on one end and the female side on the other end, so you can just turn 90. So I'll get that coming, and you know, it should be good for now. Hope you guys enjoyed.